This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to The Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relation podcast. Since 2015, I am back here in the very fine studios of Pod Populi, podcast for the people. I'm at the one in Boca Raton, Florida. It's starting to get steamy here. Back on the controls after a long hiatus. Fan favorite, Ariana. How are you? Plug in. Say hi, Ariana. Yell really loud. She missed it. All right. She'll chime in later because we have questions. I want to do something a little bit different today. So I brought in some guests that they're not a little bit different, but they have a certain level of expertise that I felt that I needed. There's a lot of pivotal times in a relationship, or when you're early on in a relationship, or when you're married, that you have to decide, are we going to live together and where are we going to live? And that can bring people together. It can tear them apart, but it certainly leads to a lot of conversations. So I'm not going to bring them in because I want to have a legal discussion on it. I want to sort of get their opinion on a practical discussion. In this very fine studio, Pod Populi, podcast for the people, there are an awful lot of real estate podcasts that get recorded out of this part. Nobody does a better real estate podcast than these two. Sometimes three. They have a third. She's not here today. They host a show called The Sunny Side, where they take a look at a lot of the quirks and trends and interested parties and interesting parties that come along with the South Florida real estate world. So if you have a couple $1 million lying around, it's not enough. Go get a mortgage and then come back to see them.
Thank you.
They are 2/3 of the Katia Beresh, Gerow, is that right?
CBG.
The CBG
Make it short.
real estate empire. Scott Gerow and Rachelle Beresh. How are you?
Well, thank you for the intro. My question to you, you felt like you needed advice, or you still feel?
Oh, I both. I've, there are times when a couple of people have been dating 3 months and they're like, oh, let's move in together. And that can be done to save money, but there are lease issues, there are credit issues, there are conversations that need to be had. And then when people come to buy a home, so you guys deal with mostly buyers.
Correct.
Do you try and assess the status of the relationship and who's putting up the money and who's on the paperwork?
Never.
Or who's this? Or like you kind of have to be, is it the two of you, if they're not married? If it's, because I remember a couple years ago, like I saw Aaron Rodgers and Danica Patrick bought a couple like estates together, and I'm like, is it under like a business trust? Like, I didn't think they were going 50 years together. That seems like a level of complication that two very wealthy people wouldn't need.
Doesn't that sound fun?
Yeah, I'm just like, why? Are they sharing investment? Like, their relationship, I think, has to be pretty serious before you start buying property together.
And I think it's not our job to vet them. I think if they're walking through the door and they're shopping for real estate, they better have their things lined up before they walk through the door to see us.
We already have enough stuff to deal with than trying to figure out what's going on in front of us.
You're not asking who's paying here?
Well, no. Well, we ask but not ask. I think there's certain ways of figuring out, like I always say, who's driving that bus?
Yeah.
Is that what you say?
Well,
who's driving this bus? So how do you figure it out?
No, you don't say anything. It's just in the questions and people who step up.
His money?
Who makes the decisions?
Who makes the decisions?
Who makes the decisions? Well, sometimes she makes the decisions and he has the money, or vice versa,
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we had somebody the other day that said, I love it. I want to buy it right now, but I can't do it. My wife has to come and she needs to check the box. And then when that happens, we're good to go.
Is that frustrating for you to deal with, where one seems all in and one is not?
It happens all the time.
All the time.
So I
you guys
say,
are pros, you just deal with it?
It's part of the business, but I think sometimes the wife will want a single family home. The husband wants a condo. And then suddenly it switches.
And then he wants that and they want that?
It happens more than you would ever think.
I spent like a couple hours with somebody last week, and she's all in. She's loving the condo that we're showing her and everything. And then she says, after a lengthy investment of my time, I just have to convince my husband to move now. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we even down this road? You should have done your homework behind the scenes and then come to see us.
And you guys deal with some luxury stuff. Is there a level of pre-qualification in the state of Florida that in order to even see a house that you have to, California is rough. Like California, you can't just go to a house, because a lot of guys used to do that to meet hot realtor girls, and vice versa. It still happens.
It does.
So, what are the rules in the state of Florida?
what other industries you have to, besides like show business, where you show your picture and you're on the internet and you're
I know
standing there next to a Lamborghini, you know?
They are, and that's why you're all on bus benches and billboards. Like, there is, I mean, half of Orange County real estate agents were actresses who auditioned for me back in the day. Oh. And they're like, I can do this, but a lot of it is being somewhat friendly and charming to wealthy people.
Yes.
Right, and there's a line. Sometimes that can be misconstrued. When I first got in the business, you're hungry. You want business. You're not doing anything wrong, but sometimes that can be taken a different way. And I had to call the police and get a restraining order on someone.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Wow. It was not a fun situation. So you have to be very cognizant of what you're putting out there for your picture, everything, the way you dress. Depending on what kind of business you want. That's not the type of business we want.
Right. The type of business you want is wealthy, stable, happy, second home buyers who don't think about it.
True.
People are less likely to think about a second home than a first home.
Yeah, it's a want, not a need.
Correct.
Right.
They've already got a roof over their head, maybe even two.
So this is more of a fun thing that it's not.
Totally.
They're not necessarily asking about school districts.
Right. Like, hey, wow, Boca's awesome. The weather's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's buy something here.
Yeah.
You know?
More so they're asking about walking out my door. What's there? What can I get? Restaurants, bars, shops.
How much questions do you have to know your neighborhood environment?
Pretty much everything.
Everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Schools,
Waterway. Schools isn't really our clientele for the most part. We second homeowners. They own their primary usually in the Northeast. They come down here, or it's people from the West communities.
Right.
That now they're empty nesters, so they're moving east. They don't want to hear about schools.
Oh, that's true. They don't want to.
That's like a bit of a buzzkill. You don't want to mention that,
I was up in a meeting on Palm Beach Island a couple weeks ago, and this guy was complaining that he saw a school bus on the island.
Oh my
He
God.
was horrified. He's like, once there's school buses, it's less of a vacation spot.
Yeah.
It was really jarring to him.
Welcome to Palm Beach.
He's like, I came away to get away from that.
That's good.
So if two people want to buy something together, do you care? You're like, who? Because it's more complicated legally, right?
Yep, it is, but we don't deal with the legal aspect. We deal with having them both fall in love with one property and then let their attorney do the rest.
Equally, they have to fall in love.
Well, someone always wins a little bit more than the other person, but equally, they have to love it for the most part. Although I did have a sale once where they were moving from the Northeast. The husband never saw the property.
Right.
The wife picked it out, and he only saw it when they closed.
Wow.
Well,
he walked around the block a couple times. And
did you guys go through that during COVID when it was a lot of like sight unseen?
Yes.
I mean, I heard stories about that where people were just grabbing
Mm-hmm.
stuff in Hilton Head Island who retired in New York, and they're like, we just want to
100%. Because we were like one of the only states was really open, kind of in full swing, and we had great weather, and But the problem was a lot of people would come. They'd just be like, I put a contract on it and hold it. Then they come down here and they'd inspect it, and then they'd have like second thoughts, and they'd cancel the contract. So anytime that was happening, we were kind of hesitant until they were really like on the ground and saw it with their own eyes. Because everybody was just, I'll take it. I need to grab it. So that's what inflated prices too.
This is not a place for a starter home. South Florida.
I mean, you've been here long enough.
I think Florida's half the price of California still.
Really?
Maybe even less.
You think?
Well,
I said that comment the other day because I just came from Arizona. I was at the studio in Scottsdale. And I think Florida's, for high-end stuff, Florida's half of California and Scottsdale is half of Florida. Wow. So you can get an insane place that is $2 million in the Valley in Phoenix. It'd be 4 here. It would be 8 in California.
Wow.
I would think if you think of like when we do our CBG minute, most of the big sales are California.
Yeah, except for Palm Beach Island. And that is because it's very limited amount of property and a certain amount of people. Like don't even call unless you have
A letter from your banker.
8-figure, 20, right.
I mean, but I'm smiling because I'm so proud of you. Look at you. You are like our little real estate.
Well, I pay attention because I lived in California for a long, long time, and you cannot buy any house in Los Angeles County of any kind for under $1 million right now. None. Like an absolute shack under, and San Francisco's probably worse. Like a shack under the freeway is $1 million. And I'm like, if you have the $1 million to spend, is it worth it to live in California, in Los Angeles, to have that? And, people fighting over scraps of property in Santa Monica because the Santa Monica schools are better than the rest of Los Angeles. And so young couples, young families, they have to make this decision, like you want to live in a place where you want to live. But, you might better off going to wherever that town is in Mississippi on that HGTV show. What is that show called? Where they don't seem to be running out of houses to fix. That's
the husband and wife.
Yeah, where the one they just fix up houses in the little town in Mississippi. And I'm like, well, 200,000 goes a long way there.
Does.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're getting so many people from California.
Oh,
it's
most
a
definitely.
value. Like we say every week, we in the past would have maybe 1 or 2 a year. 50% of our calls are people from California.
It's an exodus. It is.
It is.
And that goes to show you, if the pricing is so vastly different, it's a good value here.
It's
and same weather.
It is a good value here. It's similar weather. It's fine, but still the level of what a couple $1,000,000 will get you in Florida versus California is insane.
But we're also in an area where there's a lot of geography here, like a lot of little towns, a lot of little cities. So it might not be the price point you can afford in Boca Raton, but then you can go down to Fort Lauderdale, or you can go up to, wherever else. Within let's say 50 miles, you have a lot of options.
I know. Well, it's an interesting exercise. If you go on, and I know all the real estate people are going to tell me not to trust Zillow, but say you want to do your Zillow porn late at night, but people do. And you go to California and you do anything within, say, 50 miles of the coast, and you just put in, show me everything under 750,000 within 50 miles. It's just nothing. It's zero.
Wow.
Like nothing comes up.
You refresh.
Yeah. It's a zero.
It's a
like
glitch.
there's nothing of any kind. So a lot of young people, when they, every year we put out our list of the best and worst dating cities and all that kind of stuff. Los Angeles is never high on the list, but certain people have to look at that. What can I afford?
Yeah.
What is the dating pool like? How much does that turn over? If you're not looking to date actors and actresses, the pool's churning over in Los Angeles. Not that many people can move there, or San Francisco. There's just certain cities and certain markets where you are shut out of if you're 26 years old and you don't want to have 3 roommates anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So where are those people going? They're going to the desert?
Well, they used to go to Nashville,
Interesting.
and now Nashville's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
When I was when I was Ariana's age in New York City, it was very normal. I didn't, because at the time I lived with my girlfriend, which saved money. People had 4 people in a 1.5 bedroom, and they put up some wall, and they just had to make it.
Oh my God.
And you just kind of like, we're going to go out anyway, and we crash, and we're out to fight. And people a lot of young people don't want to do that anymore. A lot of young people don't want to take on 3 roommates. I want my space. I want my quiet. I want my whatever. But now people look at where are the affordable places where I can have fun, date, have a nice place. The pool is getting smaller on places like that because although we heard there was this great exodus from all of the cities have not necessarily gotten cheaper.
Right.
When everybody bailed out of New York and all the rents plummeted, they're higher now than they ever were. So you can go to certain places like Charlotte that has a little bit of sprawl to it. So there was a little bit of room. Places like Greenville, South Carolina. Like there's little pockets of young, fun, dynamic that you can probably still buy something and establish roots, because it is really hard to date if you are not committed to a community. Yeah. If you're like, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be here, which is always a challenge in New York. A lot of people are like, Los Angeles, how much longer am I going to stay here? You're a lot less likely to pursue something that you're going to look to get out of, or you're going to learn to do that. Atlanta went through that for a while. Now Atlanta's pretty good, but there's a while people were like in Atlanta on their way to Tampa. They were like in Atlanta for a while. And if you're not committed to your city because either you think you can't afford to marry and grow a family there, then you're looking to date to find somebody who will also willing to leave. That's a tough bullseye to hit.
Yeah.
Well, what about a city like Miami, where I think that when I lived there, I think the average shelf life was 4 to 7 years. So who's committed?
Well,
to
Miami.
that city? So it's a very different dating scene.
Do people date in Miami, or they go out, or they go
They
home
hang out.
together?
They hang out. Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
So that's the thing. You're diving into this pool of nightlife and
that's
fun and
shark infested.
7 o'clock in the morning and all just wild.
Oh my
but
God.
at some point, somebody's going to be like, I just want to go out to dinner, and then that's expensive in Miami.
Very.
Even going out when, not to age you guys too much, but you probably went out in the days before in a place like Miami, pre-bottle service.
Oh, no.
You only went out during bottle service?
Oh, pre-bottle service. Pre-bottle, yeah.
So you could go out and you would buy drinks, and even an expensive night was a couple $100.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
If you are not all in with 6 bottles of Grey Goose and the private thing, like you're just shut out.
Yeah.
There is no...
You got no game.
You have nothing. And certain cities... Right,
That's so scary.
I know, it's so scary, the amount of money. So we'd always have to bring some less attractive rich guy who's like, your job is to pay and you can come in and we'll have the girls and you could be in our thing. And that's your role, but you can come along with us.
Take it or leave it.
Or you're smuggling in, like you said, you're smuggling in airplane bottles.
Back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was always some guy to do that. So you're making, decisions to go to a certain city that you hear are so fun. So like Austin, Texas.
I was going to ask you about.
That's one that is still reasonably affordable, has fun, but it's almost too fun because nobody wants to get off the ride and be in a relationship because it's like, oh no, I'm going to miss out on all of this, which also makes it a challenge. And then you wake up and you're 34, which is nothing wrong with 34, but you just did 10 years of late nights and you're like, oh shit, and I'm still in Austin, So there's certain places. DC has some affordability if you move outside, slightly outside of the Beltway, like past like Arlington maybe, like a little bit down. There's some Falls Church, Virginia. There's places that are still affordable at 26 that if you decide you want to stay in a community, you can probably buy a house. I'm not sure Miami is that.
No, definitely not. I mean, talk about having roommates. I mean, hospitality is one of the biggest industries there. So you have 2 to 3 people living in a condo or a rental, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, those are some of the most fun times of your life when you look back. Like, I wish people nowadays wouldn't put their nose up at it because it is fun. You form these relationships.
It was fun. It's like, oh my God, did he bring her home?
Oh my
Did
God.
she go home? Like, there was some...
There's a red tie in the door.
There was some element to that I think people are like, I need my space. Or Ariana, are you on the mic yet?
Yes, I am.
Do people still do that? Do you have roommates and tie a ribbon on the door or something if you're with a boy?
No.
You're just
I think it's just like a universal code. You have to knock before you go.
Oh, so polite.
Oh, that's so polite. That's so evolved.
knock on
I used to
my
have this
own door?
roommate who, if he knew I was home with a girl, he would intentionally walk in naked and be like, hey, is there any mustard?
No.
He would just walk in like, is there any mustard? And he would come up with some stupid question just to freak her out.
That's great.
Like it was terrible or whatever.
How devoted are you to Brian? Let's find out.
Right, exactly. Are you willing to put up with me? And that's why, like, oh my God, my 20s. All right, I'm here with Scott and Rachelle. We are diving into where you should live and why you should think about things before you either commit to a city or think about moving there. We got to take a quick break so we can pay for some of these Palm Beach County houses, and we will be back right after this. And we are back. You lived where in your 20s? Not that you're not in your 20s, but I'm going to assume.
Palm Springs, California.
Really?
Talk about no dating scene. I mean, it was a very different
It was old
place.
and gay.
Very much. I could not get in trouble in my
Now,
20s.
how does a nice girl from Minnesota or wherever you're from end up there?
I was in television. So my job took me there.
To Palm Springs?
To Palm Springs, KMIR. I was the producer for late night news there.
That cuts into the dating pool scene too, right?
right.
You got to work.
Yeah. I mean, I had the late night news, so you'd have to come in probably 1:30. You do I can't remember if it was 10 or 11 o'clock news.
Now, from Palm Springs, do you go to, because people from LA go to Palm Springs and people from LA go to Vegas. Where do people from Palm Springs go?
I went nowhere. I was
they
20. I was poor.
Well, Palm Springs is another place where there was money. So you see, even then,
Seasonal.
it's seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
You see, like, I want that. I want to be a part of this. This looks so fun. There's a lot of society events, just like down here.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be invited to them, but that's an outfit. That's that's shoes. That is. It's hard.
But it was for a girl like from Minnesota like me.
Yeah.
You'd go and you'd be at restaurants and you'd see these celebrities. I mean, it was such a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, something that you would never think of when you're growing up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. So it was fun.
Had you been to California as a kid?
No.
So you just sight unseen went to California
I mean, sunshine,
and you saw a cactus and
cactus.
yeah, and like that's amazing. Some people from Palm Springs
And I
have never
remember
seen
the news station, we talked about how it can be for months, 120 degrees. And they would yell at the weatherman, don't say it's hot. tourism board would call.
Yeah, what is the word they want you to
Hello,
use?
it's hot. It's
Seasonal?
120, so every week we get a call from them. Please don't say that.
That's so funny.
Oh, hot's a negative. And where were you in your swinging 20s?
New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was opening restaurants. I was running bars. So, I mean, that is very conducive to dating.
It is, but then, you know, people who go to like NYU, there's no like $2 beer dive bars in New York City that you can go to like you can in some universities. Like it's hard to, you know, it's $200 keg in New York City.
But you'd still have those, you know, those local bars, the Irish bars, you know, where beers were pretty inexpensive. And it wasn't like, hey, we're shutting this down and turning it into a club at 9 o'clock, you know? So if you wanted to go to a club, you go to a club at 1 o'clock. But every corner, every street had its own like sports bar or Irish bar or whatever.
If you're just New York City, and I get why people want to move there from all over the place, especially people who come from a place like Los Angeles. They see New York, they see the New York City on television, and they're like, I want to be a part of that. And when you are in it, it is awesome.
It is.
In your 20s.
Oh, yeah.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
But you do know if you are ever going to get into a relationship, you're gonna want to go to Larchmont. You're going to want to Oyster Bay. You're going to want, like, very few people like meet in New York City, and 15 years later they're raising their family there.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's a cost because you're not getting a yard.
It's very true.
You know, the school, it's expensive if you want to go to private school or whatever. So you hope to find somebody in New York City to leave New York City.
Yeah. Like a lot of financial people, you know, they'd go to the outer boroughs, take the train in, you know, have that
They do. Hey, I grew up in
life
Westchester County, so I mean, I get it. All the dads got on the trains and they went in
read their newspaper.
Read the newspaper, and there's a bar car on the train, and they commute and whatever. But New York City, where it was just like the night would go on. And you'd be at some dive bar at 4 o'clock in the morning with some jukebox and whatever. And
it was the best.
It was the best. I always made the joke that this is pre-Uber, that your goal going out in New York City, as a guy at least, was to not hear the words 2 stops, please, when you got in a cab at the end of the night. Because if she said 2 stops, please, that meant it was over.
Oh,
Right, so you would just try and just be like, give your address, and that was it.
Or I have a good one. When you're trying to get a cab and you tell them you got to go to like Queens or Brooklyn, and the cab, because that's where she lives, and the cab driver's like, no, I'm not going there, because they can't get a fare back. And then now you're stuck in the corner trying to get a cab to Brooklyn again.
And that is the thing. Like geographically, you're only talking maybe 3 miles away. It might as well have been another part of the world. That's why the people who live in Jersey, the young people living in Jersey City and Hoboken, they have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
It's a little more affordable. They have all the nightlife they want. But if they really want to go into the deep end of the pool and go to New York City, you're train right away and do all that kind of stuff, you know?
So at heart, are you in New York or California?
That's a good question. So I always said, if somebody asked me in Los Angeles, I was in Los Angeles, I don't know, 17 years, something like that. Somebody say, where are you from? And I go, I'm from New York, but I live in LA now. It was just one sentence. I'm from New York, but I live in LA now. And then one time, 5 or 6 years ago, I was in some store on Melrose, and the girl was like, so where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from here. And it was like a brain thing happened in my head. I'm like, am I from here? I'm from Los Angeles. And it was really disturbing to me that I felt like, okay, here's my New York card. I'm a 310. I'm not a 212, 917. Like I gave it up, and I really felt at that point, like I'd never said it out loud. I always said it the same way. But being back in Florida a lot, it's like riding a bike. You are back in the New York. Everybody here is from New York.
Yeah,
I now feel like I'm from New York again.
Especially Boca, sometimes like at a restaurant on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
I've been showing properties and somebody's from Long Island, and they meet like 3 people from their neighborhood, and none of them know that they're down here. They're kind of like quietly creeping, away from their Long Island, North Shore home.
Yeah, we have to be very quiet about like who's here, not mentioning names.
I was in a taxi in, I think I was in Bangkok, and the cab driver, very broken English, he's like, where are you from? Was that bad? Was that racist? Can I do that? That was a real good impression.
But you're talking about the man that you met.
Yeah, no, and I go, Los Angeles, and he goes, oh, Tom Hanks. And I'm like, yeah, okay, Tom Hanks. And I go, but I'm originally from New York. And he goes, oh, Hillary Clinton. And I go, Hillary Clinton? As a New Yorker, I was so offended. Like, that's who's associated with New York? Like, Hillary Clinton? Like, she's not from New York. And I was, like, so mad. And then my, like, New York New York pride, jump back in. Do people, again, this is the legal side of it. You probably don't get involved in it. Most wealthy people buy things through a company or a trust, or people are just writing checks?
Well, the funny thing is now that the laws have changed for, how you have to disclose your funds and how you paid for something. Plus, with taxation, a lot of people that are moving here are trying to, like coming from California and New York, trying to avoid those high state costs of taxes. So they have to,
Declare.
it has to be in their name here now. So before it could be in Brian Howie LLC. And
Yeah.
it didn't matter where the money was coming from. Now, to qualify for those tax savings, you have to say, Brian Howie is the
You have to
sole
live
owner.
188 days or whatever it is.
Yeah,
78.
yeah. And they'll audit
math
you
is.
to death. They really will.
Well, that's
Yeah.
happened with Trump, right? Like Trump stayed here a long enough time that he wanted to be resident. They're like, you can't live at Mar-a-Lago according to the laws of Palm
hotel.
Beach Island, right? And they're
Right.
like, you cannot live here, and he didn't care. He's just like, I'm here, and I don't want to pay the taxes.
Yeah.
And whatever. Somebody comes in to you and they want to buy a piece of property. How do you ask the question? Do you say, what's your budget? Is that the word?
I mean,
What's the word that you would use when you're getting into 8-figure properties?
well, you start showing them properties and they'll kind of tell you. I mean, we try not to ask that question.
But you
But-
have to know what kind of time
Yeah.
you're wasting, and you have to know because the variety here is $1.5 million to 60.
52 million over here, yeah.
Right. How do you narrow that? That's a lot different from 200 to 250,000.
This is true. This is true. But you can, like, we've had it where you can show someone a $4 million property. That's great, but that's not my budget. Oh, where are you comfortable at?
That's a good one. Where are you comfortable at? Yeah.
Comfortable
Where
at.
would you like to comfortably land?
Where's your comfort zone?
yeah.
Or do you try and be like, which part of you assume they know going in, like what zip code are you interested in? Or
No.
you can't assume anything.
They don't. People come here and we say people land, bing, show me everything.
How
A lot of times.
many men are doing that to impress a girl they're with? Can you tell that? Does that happen where it's like, let's go look at houses? I just met this girl, but I'm going to
Well, we get different things. There's not so much men trying to impress females, but you get people that for some reason want to pretend like they're buying a house or a property. They'll come up with fake proof of funds. They'll run you all over town. They'll submit offers that aren't real. I mean, it's a real offer, but
Why would they do that?
We don't know.
thank you.
We don't
Hello,
know.
$1 million question.
Like that old Glengarry Glen Ross line, like they just like talking to salesmen.
Something.
It's-
But they
I think
waste
it's a weird
lot
thing.
of their own. It's almost
And
like.
it's a lot of work on their end,
Yes,
right?
it is. It's a huge
But it
investment
has
of
to be
time for
some
them.
little thing that they really enjoy, because there's one person that we know of that's been doing it for years.
Years.
Oh.
And
years.
they keep circling. I mean, we won't deal with them anymore, but
Is it manifesting?
Certainly is not.
No.
We can't just give a pass on that. Like,
Thanks for asking,
I'm
though.
Just letter, make it become real.
right. Like I can see myself in my dream home.
Yeah, no.
No?
I mean, this at least 4 that I know of, that he's come around and, and the money will be there. I'm going to get the deposit in. And, you kind of just shrug your shoulders and go, it's
But you had
those
that
folks again.
You had that one in Miami where the guy tap tap.
Yes, I did. One of the first properties I had in Miami that I was listing. And, it was a woman that, we both know and everything. And, she's showing her client. He's like, oh, look at the views. Wouldn't this be amazing? You wake up and everything. And they go into the next room and he just grabs a handful of butt. And then looks over his shoulder at me and walks in the door with his hand. And he was much, much older than her. And they didn't give me any sign that they were a couple or anything. And he just looks at me and is like, yeah.
Oh.
That's how I'm spending my afternoon. How are you doing yours, Scott?
Yeah, ask for forgiveness and not permission, I suppose.
So I guess sometimes people
We are in the love dating relationship business, and sometimes love dating relationships go bad. What are the divorce? California's a common law state. What is Florida?
I wouldn't
Do
know.
you know? I know you haven't, thankfully, but because that matters in basically what it is. A lot of, again, I'm going to get in trouble from the women. A lot of women marry a wealthy man who is retired, and the amount of money she's entitled to sort of is what he has, anything he gains from the time you married him, and his net worth might go down during the course of your marriage.
Probably.
So it's not just marry a rich guy and you get half of anything he earns after that. not all states are like that. So caveat emptor on you sugar daddy chasers.
But wait a minute, even with a prenup that states something differently? Does it
Prenup
supersede?
can actually get you more than, I mean, if you write a prenup, it is what it is. But if you marry a guy who's got $30 million on the day you met him and he does not earn another dime during that time that you were married together, it's what you earned
Together.
while you were together.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So that's a factor. People are like, oh my God, did she marry this guy's rich? But like, if it doesn't go well,
Yeah.
and then some states are the other end of the spectrum, like Texas, like you have no rights. Like if he or she, not to stereotype, just decides you don't get anything, you don't get anything. You know, and so young daters, think about that before you get into it.
I know, like it's funny because we compete with people from Texas. So come here,
right? So you're trying to, it is the second biggest decision I think you ever make in your life is buying a home, other than the person you are going to hopefully live in this home with. I think number one is probably marriage proposal. Number two is what you're going to do together, and that can even be early in a relationship when you're like, we're going to move in together, either to. There's two ways that young people, this is for you, Ariana, move in together. They either move in together to save money or they move in together to push the relationship to a new place.
Right.
Let's see how this goes.
I mean, you've heard that with a baby, right? Hey, we're going to have a baby, and that's going to save the relationship.
Right. They're like, we're not working out as husband and wife. Let's try mom and dad.
Try lease first. Do the lease and see how that goes.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a lot of people like, we'll just have a baby and see if that makes us closer together. I'm like, no, then you're.
I had no sleep and stress.
I mean, a house, you're tethered to somebody for a little while.
Go in the
a
other
baby,
room.
you're tethered with them for 50 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, people don't think about it that way. That's on an apartment in your 20s, and that's a good trial or however you want to do it. But when you're looking to buy something together, you have to look at both if it works out.
Yeah.
Is it an investment for both of you? Is it a place that you're going to plan on living for 20 years? And what happens if it doesn't work out?
Sure.
And there's a lot of thought to go in that. And it should be such a happy, positive, dream-filled time. It stinks to even go to that place in your mind. Like, what if it doesn't? But I think people have to think about this stuff, right?
Completely. I would say if you are not married and buying a property, you would want to put it in some type of title that all that work has been done behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because, things go south. I mean, you hear stories of people that have dated for 5 years. They get married and move in, and it's over in a month.
Yeah, they didn't know about the sock drawer and they didn't know about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then you see people, like, I was always fascinated by not even the example I brought up earlier, like Aaron Rodgers and Danica Patrick or whatever, but super wealthy married people. Ben Affleck and J-Lo. They are together, they are a couple, and they just bought a house. How does that work? You got this one? I got this one? Are they investing? Do they just have it invest? Like, how does that, how does that conversation go?
I would imagine there's like a lot of billable hours for like the attorneys and the accountants.
At some point,
okay, let's all get around dinner.
They have to talk about like, he's got $200 million, she's got $200 million. They want to buy a $8 million house in Aspen. It's pocket change to both of them, but it's got to be somebody's pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good one.
I know.
I like that though. You get this one, I'll get the next.
I mean, I wonder what that's like for them. I wonder if it's just, okay, some lawyers, after they sit down, they're like, go ahead and we'll set up a real estate fund and you guys put it into it equally. You know, Giselle and Tom Brady, somebody was like, oh, it's amazing how quickly they got divorced and unraveled or whatever. They probably had teams working through this reverse engineering you have businesses together, I assume, properties together, investments together. You know, I don't know.
A lot of stuff.
It's like, when some CEOs go out to lunch, it's like, how's that bill happen? Like, what happens when the check comes?
And the real estate might be the easiest thing of it all.
Right.
Just split it down the middle and sell it. But that's the thing with real estate. There's consequences financially, right? You have to, obviously there's no mortgage, but you got to pay closing costs and commissions and things like that. So you're not just selling it at the same price. If you sell it at the same price, you're taking a hit.
And what if I don't want to sell it? And what if we do? I know these are levels of conversation. Part of me understands why a couple of either successful or famous people get together because they sort of understand the demands of the job, so to speak. But part of me is like, oh my God, that's two sets of lawyers and two egos. And
more so than anything.
Careers are going at the same place. I heard Matt Damon on a podcast last week, and he lived down the street from from Ben Affleck when he was married to Jennifer Garner. And he's like, there was a certain amount of paparazzi down there then, and, we kind of dealt with it and whatever. He's like, now he's married to an icon. Like, Jennifer Garner is incredibly famous. The level between her and Jennifer Lopez, Matt Damon had to comment, he goes, it is a different thing for even Ben Affleck to have to deal with,
Poor Ben.
Poor Ben, every move, everything. And I'm just like, I'm sure he loves her, and it's a sweet story. They came back together and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of headache involved in that.
I was going to say, is it?
Do we really
Is
want
it
to
a
do this
sweet
again?
story?
Do we really want to buy real estate together?
It's like, so what did they do? Did they buy anything last time? And it's like, okay, we're going to get back together. No more condos and on the Sunset Strip.
No more
or there's
videos.
a year moratorium
pad.
before we buy.
And he could just probably have, that's my old bachelor pad. I did. A lot of guys hang on to their first house at that level. They're like, I have it's a sentimental value
Investment.
to me.
Right.
Investment.
Your favorite dress.
Right, so it's like, where do you go from that? I don't know. There's a lot of
fun to
There's
it.
a lot of fun to it. There's some nuance to it, but these are conversations that couples need to have beyond what color should we paint this wall?
Yes.
Wouldn't our kids look good? I mean, you really have to talk about it, and the time to sort of learn and take chances and try things out is in your 20s. Live with some people, sign a couple leases, see how it works out before you're just like, oh my God, we had such a good time at that sushi place. Let's go buy a house together.
Put the red string on the door.
With the red string on the door. Ariana's like, just knock, people. I don't know. All right, tell them. I'm going to let you tell about your podcast. And then, this is your first time on this podcast, we play something called Worst Date or First Date. So you have to think back to your swinging single days, and you have to either give us the worst date you ever had or the best date you've ever had. And that can be with your spouse. I don't care, your choice. But first of all, tell them about the podcast.
So we have an incredible podcast. We just recorded episode 80.
Good
which
for you.
I mean, can you imagine we even got there? That first 10
We
were,
listened to the first one today.
yeah. And we got our sea
My
legs.
first one, I'm up to 406 or something of this. My
Oh my
first like
gosh.
30 are like buried. I don't even know where they are. They're gone. They're not on the interwebs. So.
And it's like you had mentioned earlier, it's called The Sunny Side, the sunny and not so sunny sides of real estate here in Florida. So we talk about, market trends and have some fun and have guests on. And it's been great. We really, really enjoy it. A lot of fun. Is that a good summary?
That is a good summary.
That's a good summary.
All right, you're first, Rachelle. Worst date or first date?
Goodness. Worst date or first date? We'll talk about a one and done.
Yeah.
So South Beach Food and Wine Festival. Have you either of you been?
No, it sounds fun.
I feel like you know where this is going. So it is a great event that's in South Beach. There are events all over. The very first 2 days, there's one event on the beach, on the sand, tents, some of the best foods, wines, music. It's phenomenal. The person I went with had one too many, started throwing up all over the sand, had to be carried out. That was definitely a one and done.
Oh, no. Wow, that's not good.
No, but I had great wine.
Yeah, you got,
Yeah,
and you probably had some good food and good. Kick the sand, cover it up in the sand
I
and
had
keep
some
going.
golden tan that day.
Yeah, no. Oh, who hasn't vomited on the golden sands of South Beach at some point?
True.
That's Miami, folks. There's your Miami Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, my God.
All right, Scott, you're up.
Worst date was I dated this girl who was Brazilian in New York City, and I think she was continuously on cocaine. She was just so hyped up all the time, and it was just, you couldn't just sit and have a meal. It was like, let's go, and I couldn't understand a word she was saying half the time, and I was like responding the wrong way, and she didn't like that, and she would get angry at me, and she'd yell at me in Portuguese and everything, and it was just way too much. Couldn't do it. But I dated her for a while, I think.
There you go. Some men would pay top dollar to be yelled at by a hot Brazilian in Portuguese. So you never know. So yeah, different little cultural experience for you. This was fun, you guys. As far as us, like, share, follow. Please review not only this podcast, but the Sunny Side. Your reviews mean a lot in the podcasting ecosystem. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate@gmail.com. If you have real estate questions, moving in questions, or horror stories. Speaking of horror stories, we are one behind on this. As promised, the Bachelor and Bachelorette Party Spectacular episode is coming. You guys have been sending us some insane shit. We are doing an episode devoted to your Bachelor and Bachelorette horror stories, most of them. Some of them are actually kind of sweet. Some of them Some guy got divorced who attended a bachelor party. Like that night, he met a girl and called his wife, got divorced. So they're all
my
coming.
God.
That, I think, is coming the next episode. You might be able to get some under the wire. Shoot us an email, greatlovedebate at gmail.com. And check out our live tour schedule. There are some shows. I don't do nearly as many as I used to. We got upcoming shows in Raleigh, North Carolina, Tempe, Arizona, New York City at City Winery, which is a very nice venue, and a couple more. Go to greatlovedebate.com for that. Tickets either are on sale or should be on sale soon, because as always at the Great Love Debate, we never stop making love. See you next time.